Welcome to the One Shot Test Kitchen with Mike, Samara, and April Lynn. This is episode 1, The Sundered Land. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of One Shot Test Kitchen, where we try out lesser-known tabletop RPGs. My name is Mike Kelly. I am joined by my two co-hosts, April Lynn and Samara.
Hi everyone, I'm April Lynn.
And I'm Samara.
Yeah, so we decided to give this thing a whirl to see what we can do. Like, the basic idea is that we're going to be trying out a new tabletop RPG every week. I mean, we all have kind of our own ways that we're approaching this in terms of like what we're looking for out of this. So I guess April, why don't you start? Like, why are you joining us on? Why are you going on this journey? I guess. Sorry, April Lynn. Have it.
Why am I doing this? So I have a history of, I think we all have a history of playing role-playing games for a long time. I started probably back in my mid-20s, doing a lot of the normal, like, standard campaign length RPGs like Deadlands, did a little bit of D&D, some White Wolf stuff, and I still like those things, but the older I've gotten, the less time I have. So it's harder, and it just is less appealing to me to get involved in a long campaign session because I have other priorities. I have other things that I want to be doing with my time. But I've really, as I've grown to know more about the indie role-playing game world, I just really love the creativity that people are taking the idea of role-playing games and just turning them on their heads, playing with mechanics, conflict resolution mechanics, leaning more into the storytelling aspect and away from the statistics. So I have a backlog of role-playing games, storytelling games that I have wanted to dig into and just haven't found the time or motivation to make it actually happen. So I'm excited to try more of them out.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you on that. Like, I think 90% of the reason I'm like 90% similar with you. Like, I don't have time to do it, and this is a good excuse to do it. Samara, what about you?
Well, I owe you a major debt, and this is part of the way of repaying it. So I am doing weekly hours against said debt. No,
I was about to say, I don't remember that.
The truth comes
that's
out.
why. Yeah, I know. That's why you're an evil overlord. You forget all these debts that you're owed. Yeah, I mean, I think that we're all kind of coming at this from the same place, right? Like, we all have the passion for it, but never enough time. So it's nice to have something set aside. And I think it's exciting to be able to record it because I think for myself, if there was somebody out there that was digging through some of these like lesser known games that would give me a chance to kind of see what they were about would be great, because I've been in kind of the same boring Wizards of the Coast ruling ever since I was like 12. So, through various editions, I am, I'm tired of Ravenloft. I'm tired of, the set subclasses and classes of that world. And I was kind of bemoaning before you had talked to me about this, and I think I actually kind of crowbarred my way into what you and April Lynn were already discussing, because I was getting really tired of what can happen even in the most creative campaigns with Dungeons and Dragons, which is like, it's hard to get off that wheel of interaction, puzzle, fight things, interaction, puzzle, fight things. And like, you can switch it up a little bit, and the puzzles can be really interesting and the worlds can be really deep, but it does get kind of cyclical. And, I have the space for that. I've got a great group to play, but I'm really excited to see what a lot of these other games do, the themes that they're able to explore because of the way that they play with rule systems, also to have the space to like analyze games afterwards, not just like play it because, you really needed to get back to your orc bard and tell that story, but because you needed to explore some really, tough issues and try to understand like what the game creators were getting at and how they got there.
Yeah, that absolutely resonates with me. Like, I think one of the games that I want to eventually tackle on one of these is something that does a lot more political themes. So like really dealing with that is interesting. So Yeah, April.
No, so I wanted to comment on what Samara said about how one part of what we wanted to do with this is not just play the games that have been sitting in our backlog, or in your case that you haven't even heard of before, but also to analyze them, to be able to talk about them, what they are trying to accomplish, whether they successfully do what they accomplish. So in that sense, do more than just be a game group, but be able to look at these games as the art that they are. Uh,
Yeah. Part of this is absolutely like a certain level of evangelism too. Like, some of the games that we're going to be playing, like some of the game we've been compiling, like games that we want to play, like things I've never heard of that I absolutely desperately want to explore and then explore, show to a bigger audience as well. Like, because
part.
like, as Samara was saying, like you can get into the whole Wizards of the Coast, like, method of doing things, but there's a whole bigger world out there of indie tabletop RPGs, and I think that like bringing that to another audience is, great.
Yeah, and look, man, if you're a hardcore stan for D&D and like you know that you're never gonna like get off that bus, like I still think that there's value in seeing what other people are doing, because maybe you can bring some of that into your game to like play with that, rule system and do something a little bit different.
Mhm.
But
Absolutely.
the hope is that maybe you get excited enough to get your groups, to play some of these. I'm excited to bring it to my group because I feel like I love the group that I've been playing with for the last untold amount of years, but like
Mhm.
I mean, you're gonna fall into some tropes when you're playing the same game for that many years. So, yeah. So what's the one that you picked out for this time, Mike?
So yeah, we're for our first game. We're going to be playing a game called the Sundered Land. It's made by Night Sky Games. It is a one-page RPG that's it's mostly designed for online play, like you just like on a Facebook post, on a forum or something like that. But I have seen it used in a person-to-person format and online format pretty well. So we're going to give it a whirl here.
Is
Um,
one page, can I ask you a question? Is like one page RPG like a category of RPGs? I mean, I know that like I saw the rules, so the rules are one page, but is that like a standard thing that there are a lot of games out there that are like, nope, our rules are only one page?
I don't know. I've heard it used colloquially. I don't know if it's an actual like genre.
Sure.
I know that micro RPG is, in the sense that it's something that's condensed to fit in a certain amount of space, and be quick to learn and quick to play. So
Yeah, and
it's
also
also
time limited as
possible.
well.
Sorry, it's also possible that it came from a like games jam that was specifically
Mhm.
make one page RPGs.
Yeah,
That makes
definitely some of
sense.
the ones we've looked at are similar to that. Like, yeah, they come out of a 24-hour game jam, create a game kind of thing.
All right, cool.
So yeah, with the Sunderland though, so this the way it's distributed, and I just want to make sure that we put this in it. Every time we talk about it, the game's available at nightskygames.com. It's a downloadable PDF that, as of this recording, is on sale for $5 US. So I know that you guys took a brief look at the rules. So what are you expecting out of this, April?
Let's see. So I haven't ever played a role playing game that was specifically designed to be played in a textual form. Like it's specifically
Mhm.
designed to be played as posted, not audio, not in person. And so that's really interesting to me. Obviously, we're not doing it that way. So it's something that if I like it, I'll have to go take it to my Facebook group or Discord or something and try it out that way. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how it works. And also, I'm looking forward to leading you to your doom. We haven't talked about the rules or how this game works, but that will be a fun challenge. And how about you,
Yeah,
Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I admittedly, even though the rules are only one page, I still felt like I left being like, I think I know how this works, but not really sure. But fundamentally, like, I've never played a game that is set up with this dynamic where the players act as the world that like the GM or like the rules master navigates through, for like, because, we're building it in real time. So there's not really like a game master, but, Mike is the one who's sort of the single player that we're around. So for me, as somebody who's been again the DM in a multi-year D&D campaign, there is like my megalomania is like having to sit on the sidelines because I I'm not an amazing improviser, and so I'm going to be a little bit I'm a little scared that I'm gonna be crippled with fear for, like, saying the wrong thing, but that's why I'm excited for it, because I guess it's, like, forcing me to go out of my comfort zone and come up with this stuff, and I think that we'll build a cool world as a result.
So that one thing that I forgot to say earlier is Samara's the one who has a long standing D&D game, and I mostly play GMless games when I do roleplay these days, just because I appreciate that collaborative world building aspect where one person isn't expected to spend hours and hours crafting and preparing and memorizing and whatnot, that you can just read the rules and start from scratch with a group of people with nothing. So this feels a lot like that to me. And
But
I'm
April
excited to
Lynn,
have.
what would I do with all my time if I wasn't making up fake religions and backstories for the barkeep? How am I supposed to live if I'm not spending hours doing that?
I am sure you can find something on Netflix. So, yeah, Mike, what about you? You haven't shared. What are you hoping to get out of this?
So, I mean, I think there's a lot of. I don't have the. I've always been a player, in terms of my history. I've DM'd a game or two. Way back, I DM'd a game of Mage under the White Wolf system. Didn't go well because I'm not a planner. Straight up, I am not a Samara when it comes to crafting these worlds and all that kind of stuff. One concept I really like in a lot of the games that we're looking at is you play to see what happens,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mhm.
that's a concept I really really like. And this one in particular is also like this is a game I am ostensibly leading, but it is something that I'm going to have to adapt to on the fly as you guys throw dangers at me, throw monsters at me, throw whatever at me. And I like kind of the mental challenge of like, I know vaguely where I want this to go, but I'm gonna like have to pivot based on basically how devious or evil you guys are feeling tonight.
All the devious.
Always so devious.
The other thing is like I'm also very lazy, so I can't plan for anything anyway. So this is a good thing
Amen
for
to
me.
that.
Alrighty, so let's get playing then.
Yeah, so tell us about the rules.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go through the basic rules here. If you have any questions at any time when I'm explaining these, please feel free to interject. So there's actually 5 versions of the game. We're going to be using the one called A Doomed Pilgrim in the Ruins of the Future. Like I said, this was designed for online play, so there's some rules that don't really apply. Like, for example, there's one rule that says like, I as the GM, so to speak, can delete posts, but obviously we can't do that when we're actually just playing face to face.
I feel like you could update any dating profile to have as your profile a doomed pilgrim in the ruins of the future, and
Ooh.
you'd get some hot hits, man. Like, I just feel like I'm gonna throw it out there. This day, I'm just saying, just consider it.
Dibs.
That's
Yeah, I guess I'm not really a pilgrim because I don't go anywhere.
fair.
Doomed hermit in the ruins of the future.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you
there
go.
is something about a hermit in one of these actually. Maybe we should have done that one.
All right, so you're
Um,
a pilgrim.
Yes.
Sorry to
yes.
interrupt.
So now I'm just going to basically read from the PDF here. So, excuse me. I am a warrior seeking peace and an end to bloodshed. I am on a pilgrimage to the temple to no gods in the distant city of Gulls. My pilgrimage has brought me to, and it says choose a place here. So there's a list of places. So my pilgrimage has brought me to the Broken Reaches, inhabited by, choose an enemy. Okay. Inhabited by the murder cult of the ungod of spiders.
Okay, I am writing this down, so you're gonna have to repeat that.
Fair
So,
enough.
where are you starting from?
Um,
Broken
no,
reaches?
I'm not starting from it. I have basically entered the what did I say? The Broken Reaches,
Okay.
and it is inhabited by the murder cult of the ungod of spiders.
Oh god.
What's an ungod?
You tell me.
Great.
That's a really good question. I think
Oh,
we'll find out as we go.
I
Yeah,
mean, I
quite a
wanna claim that one for my dating profile.
young god of spiders.
I'm an ungod well, 'cause I thought it was, like, something of undead spiders, but no, I'm an ungod of spiders.
I mean,
It's a cult of ungod spiders or of the ungod spider?
of the ungod of spiders. So
Oh, oh.
humans or whatever
So, like a
sentient beings.
demon of spiders, maybe? I
Mhm,
What's the opposite of a god?
an ungod, obviously.
Is it
Okay,
an
continue,
ungod or is
Mike.
it a not god? What's going on here? All right, so my goal is to pass safely through and continue my pilgrimage. You, my friends, play the world. Your goal is to see me to my doom
Yes.
instead of safely on my way. So your
Great.
goal is to kill me or something worse than death. I'm not sure.
Good thing that we have the murder cult of the ungod of spiders on our side.
Obviously,
Yeah.
yes. Home court
Um,
advantage here.
so here's the rules here. You're allowed only to directly answer my direct questions, so you might not be able to do it. So I do have a degree of control here.
Mhm.
All right, here are the main rules. Number 1, only answer my questions. Number 2, if you don't already know the answer, make something up. 3, keep your answers short. 4, this is if your answer is disruptive, I'm allowed to delete it. Obviously, we're not going to be using that one. 5, otherwise I have to go with the first answer somebody gives. And the sixth one is also an online specific one. It says, you may subscribe to this thread if you like. Use the sentence, no gods watch over you to do so. So for online play, but let's just assume that no gods are watching over me as I do this.
But the ungods, they're all on
The
board.
ungods yeah, man, the ungods are here. They are
That's true.
watching.
That's very
Okay,
true.
so should we have a signal, raise a hand if we have something we wanna add? That way we don't keep talking over each other.
No, I want the person with the best idea to come first. So just like kind of say it, but I can also call on people specifically.
Okay.
So I think I'm going to do that in case, like, just so we don't. There's some things that I may want to force someone to answer if I think they'd have a tougher time answering it, quite frankly.
Okay.
Um, okay, so I have to create my character now. So there's a list of things here that basically are like attributes or items I have. So it says here, okay, so I'll just read them all real quick and then I'll decide. So I have wealth hidden in my clothing. I have a long knife under my shirt. I have the summoning name of a ghost burned into my memory. I have very long hair, uncut, unbound. I have a crossing and crisscrossing of scars. I have vast and deadly patience, and I have instincts honed by a life of violence.
How many do you pick?
I pick 2.
Okay.
So the 2 I'm going to pick, I think the summoning name of a ghost burned into my memory is the most fun thing here.
I like that one.
Yeah, I'm going to use that one. And I'm also going to say vast and deadly patience. So.
Wait until you meet the ungod.
We'll say, well, I can be patient with the ungod. All right. So beginning to play, add to your post how long you've been walking through. Okay. So now we're going to enter the narrative here. So I have been walking through the Broken Reaches, let's say less than a day. Maybe I entered it in the morning and it's getting to about noon, a little bit after. There is, say, for example, let's say I am in a small little copse of trees taking refuge from the wind. And then something warns me of approaching danger. What warns me? Anyone should answer.
The birds all suddenly go silent.
Took the words out of my mouth.
All right. So I had been there maybe taking a light snack, and all of a sudden I noticed that the birds have gone quiet. I think also everything else has kind of gone quiet as a result. The wind has died a bit, and I am looking around. Do I feel watched? Anyone can answer.
You don't feel watched.
I don't feel watched. In that case, I would get up and I would, keeping the summoning name in my head, I'd kind of walk quickly away from the trees. And it's a little bit scary for me because maybe it's something in that copse of trees. Maybe I don't know. But I do want to escape it. What happens next? Anyone can answer.
As you leave the copse of trees, you hear a voice whispering your name.
All right. I hear someone whispering my name.
Michael O'Grey O'Shannon. Michael O'Grey O'Shannon.
So I hear someone whispering my name. Is it someone that is it a voice that I know?
Yes.
Who is it?
Your friendly brain ghost.
The ghost. The ghost talks to me. Okay. All right. I speak to the ghost then. What's a good ghost name? Maybe he doesn't have a name.
Then how do you summon him?
Well, he has a
Actually,
summon.
yeah, no, I do know the summoning name, actually. Now that I think about it, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's literally one of the things we know about you.
That touche.
That and your patience is all we got.
All right, I gotta figure out his name. Actually, no. What is his name? Or what is its name?
Its name is, what's the name, that Celtic, is it Cuclain? We'll go with that. Cuclain.
Cuchulainn?
Cuclain.
Cuchulainn. Okay. So I speak to Cuchulainn in my mind's eye, while still walking quickly away from the copse of trees, and ask him if there is danger near. Is there danger near? Anyone can answer.
Are you asking us what he says or whether there's danger?
Yes.
He doesn't answer you.
All right. In that case, I think I'm going to start running. I think this ghost who I have been with has warned me of danger in the past, and when he grows silent, that is even more dangerous. I run until I find shelter behind a large rock. I sit behind the rock and I listen. Do I hear anything strange?
Before you can attune your ears to what you hear, you feel that you are, as you sort of catch your breath behind that rock and stop yourself, that your whole backside that's pressed up against the rock and your hands are covered in a very sticky substance.
Okay. I stand up. I pull my hand and I take a look at it. What is strange about this? What does this look like? April Lynn, answer.
It looks like cobwebs.
Cobwebs. Has this happened before?
No.
Okay. All right. I brush the cobwebs off on my clothes, like running my hands on my clothing to kind of get it off to the best of my ability. I think I'm going to seek some other kind of shelter. I think I'm going to keep walking through the broken reaches and try to find something else. What do I see after walking for, say, 20 minutes?
The day starts growing darker, even though it's still midday and there's not a cloud in the sky.
Okay. I think it's darker. Okay. Is the sun going out, or can I see the sun? Have I seen the sun?
It's as though someone is turning a dimmer on the sun. So not an eclipse, but the sun is getting less bright.
Okay. I am going to yell out the name of Cuchulainn and say, "What is happening? Help me." Is there a response?
Yes.
What is the response?
Cuchulainn appears before you in the way that you always know them to appear, and slightly exasperated. I was like, that's not all-knowing, dude. Like, had a life. I'm here for you to, like, work out some issues. I can be your friend on this, like, a second set of eyes, I guess, but, like, I'm not all-seeing. I'm not a god.
Okay.
Well, super helpful ghost.
He's really great in, like, emotional distress. So, like, he can, talk to you about your feelings and, about the life that he led.
A support ghost.
Yeah. It's your emotional
Huh.
support ghost.
So I'm going to say to him, why did you call my name before? Was I in danger then? Anyone can answer.
I was just answering the question of who's here to pass. You didn't hear the question. I was just answering. I was trying to be helpful because you were really weirdly silent. So I was just that's all.
I'm going to tell him, I enjoy my silence, but we're in dangerous land. I enjoy my solitude, but we're in dangerous lands right now. Are you going to help me or not? April Lynn, answer.
So as you ask him that question, he says, "Yes, I am here to help you." But his shape starts to morph into something other than what you're used to seeing.
Okay. Morphing as in he's taking a different shape, or morphing as in he is dissipating?
As in taking a different shape.
Is it a shape I recognize?
Not yet.
All right. I think I will say there is something wrong here. Are you in distress? So instead of his response, I want you to tell me, is he in danger? Samara, answer.
I'm answering on behalf of like the God, your all-knowing God world sense, your intuition.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to know what Kukulin thinks. I want to know what is happening.
So what best you can perceive in the very special bond you have with Kukulane and all the emotional things that you've shared is that appears to be something that he does not have control over or is not willing himself through, but it's difficult to tell whether or not he's enjoying the experience or not.
I wait to see what happens. What happens? April Lynn.
As you stand there, his forearm is stretched and becomes the shape of a giant beast that may or may not have many, many legs, at least 8, but possibly more. One might say spider-like,
Hmm.
that hovers over you menacingly.
All right. Can I escape?
You can try.
Just gonna leave your emotional support ghost. Wow.
Well, I don't think he's my emotional support ghost. He's now a non-supportive spider. Spider ungod.
The spider ungod, yes.
What is my best way to escape?
It looks like he is expanded into this giant multi-legged creature that, if you look hard underneath the many eyeballs that have formed on his forehead, you can still see that like familiar comforting smile that and yet on like this visage is really disturbing. And so going through him or past him doesn't really seem like an option. And you get the sense that if you run kind of straight back the way that you came, that on whatever weird legs, maybe he still moves at his ghost speed, which is really fast. So your best options are to try to sort of do a circuitous route through what you see kind of beyond where the trees start sort of breaking up a little bit, what looks to be some like broken ruins. So you're going to try to lose them maybe in a circuitous route through the ruins would be your best path of escape.
Okay. Um, hmm. I will run to the ruins. Do I get there safely?
Yes.
What does the spider ghost thing do?
Follows you.
Is he chasing me, or is he more like do I feel chased?
You definitely feel like you're being followed, but there is a weird confidence to the stroll as if go ahead, run. I'm coming. So, it doesn't match the speed and the urgency with which you have run into the ruins.
Can I outdistance it?
It's difficult because you're now in these ruins where they're sort of maze-like in the way that they've broken down. So it's a little less direct. So it's hard to tell if you've totally outdistanced him because you're not on like a football field.
Do I lose my way, or do I lose track of the creature as I run through the ruins? April Lynn, answer.
Um, Good question. You have a clammy feeling like it isn't gone, but you can't quite see if it's still there or not.
I will try to reach the edge of the ruins. Even though I'm turned around, I will try to frantically scramble to see if I can get away from it. Um, do I do I get there without danger?
Nope.
What is the danger that stops me from getting there?
More of that sticky stuff, the cobwebs behind the rock. So that is slowing you down. But it is helping you navigate. You like turn left and you're like, oh wait, those cobwebs, I ran through those. I recognize, that button that I lost on those cobwebs. But it's still like maddeningly slow and slows you down. And then as you sort of feel like you're seeing where this could lead you out, it does lead into an opening, but it is an opening that has a group of 6 individuals in hoods, and it is deathly silent.
Fuck.
Doom. Doom.
I mean, this is your goal to
They
kind
don't
of.
say that because they're silent.
Well, yes. Um, are the birds chirping?
No.
Do the figures see me? Have they shown any sign that they've seen me?
Absolutely. Their eyes are glowing and they're looking right at you.
All right. Can I fight them?
What would you fight them with?
I ask the questions.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go for it.
You have no power here.
Yeah, go for it. Kill him with patience.
Well, let me put it this way then. Do I feel that fighting them would be? Do they look fightable? Let me put it that way. Do I think that I would succeed if I fought them?
You once took down 7 burlier guys, in a pub fight once, and you were a little drunk, but you've taken on, 6 guys, they're kind of scrawny. You feel like you could take it. You certainly feel like you could take it on more than you could take on your giant ghost friend back there.
So I'm also covered in cobwebs at this point. Am I trapped, Aberlin?
You are not 100% trapped, but if you continue in the direction you are going in, there are more of the cobwebs, and you're afraid that it'll get to the point where you can no longer move.
All right. In that case, I turn tail and I run. I try to plot a path that isn't directly towards the spider ghost, but it is away from the figures. Is there a place as I run? Is there a place where I can hide?
All you find are dead ends.
Is there something in these ruins that I can use to fight, Samara?
Besides your, renowned fists, which we've already discussed, you see that there are, on one of the dead ends, as you're, like, ripping away cobwebs in frustration, feeling trapped, you see that, like, inlaid are these kind of, gemstones that are sort of protruding from them, but from age are, like, falling out. So they're sort of like like cylindrical, but like cut gems. So you've got a couple. You've got an emerald and a ruby that are kind of sharp cylindrical gems that you can pop out of the thing behind in the wall, the inlay.
Okay, and I'm assuming the way you're describing them. Like I grasp them almost like not with the knuckle part, but like brass knuckles. They have it gives a core to my fist kind of thing.
Yeah, it gives a core to your fist, and like there is like a nubbin sharp edge, so if you sort of went in the back, it's not like a deep dagger, but what you would get from a brass knuckle, you now get on the outside of your palm when you grasp it.
Okay. Okay, in that case, I grab those gems to the best of my ability. Do I feel different when I grasp the gems? Aberlin.
You no, you feel like you have some gems in your hands.
Good. I'm glad they're not like evil spider gems or something like that.
No, they're just shiny rocks.
Okay. Okay. So I grab them and I turn around back to the wall and I wait for something to follow me, catch up to me, whatnot. Does anything come?
Yeah. A huge cobweb loogie shoots straight at you.
Ew.
Um, and you sort of, before it covers your face and shoots at you, you can see that there is a rather large figure that has like turned the corner of the dead end that you're hiding in.
I slash at the loogie to try to cut through it and like loosen myself a little bit from the cobwebs, make sure I'm not trapped. Is that successful?
Somewhat. It breaks off a few pieces that were coming towards you, but now you have cobwebs on your hands, kind of gluing your fists together.
Wonderful.
Your fists have basically become Katamari Damacy balls.
Okay. So at this point, I feel that I don't have. I don't. Excuse me. I feel I can't really do too much. So, what does the creature I see do? Does he approach me?
Yeah. And spits more loogies, but like around you. So that they're like sort of, dripping and coming off the walls. And with that familiar smile that you know from your ghost friend coming out of the visage of the horrible spider thing, you hear the voice, but it's like your ghost friend's voice is like coming through a weird filter, and he says, "How do you feel right now, Michael O'Shannon O'Cradio?" That's not an actual question, that's just me being an emotional support ghost.
No, no, I know. Yeah, you're not actually asking
Questions.
me.
Emotional support.
I totally get that. Can I loosen my hands a little bit?
Nah.
Okay. I turn to Kukulane and I say, "Why?"
The broken reaches unlocked my true potential.
Did you know that this would happen? Did you trick me into coming on my pilgrimage to free yourself?
Why do you always have to make it about you?
Are you going to kill me?
No, but my friends will.
All right. So I'm going to attempt to fight this thing, and there's an additional rule here. So it says here in the rules, like when you fight an enemy, you roll 2 dice, and there's a certain thing that happens when I do that. So I'm going to roll the dice right now. It's 2d6. So I rolled a 6. It says here, I might be able to fight free. I do, and there's a blank here. So I'm going to say I attempt to wrest one of my hands out and stab it. Does it back off, recoil, reel back, or withdraw and give me the opportunity to escape?
The Kuklane spider ungod thingamajig does, but only to make room for half of the cloaked figures that you saw earlier.
Okay. Sorry, did you say that it would? Did I get my hand out, or?
Okay, so there were 2 questions there. So one was, did you manage to did the thing back off? Okay, so the other question was, did you free your hand? The answer is no, you did not free your hand.
Okay.
It's still bound in cobwebs.
All right.
But now covered in bristly spider fur.
Ghost spider.
Gross.
Ghost spider fur. Ungod ghost spider fur.
This is just getting gross.
I mean, you're the one
All
who
right.
chose the
Yeah, you chose.
god.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
exactly.
I'm not blaming you. I'm just like, I got myself into this situation. I will try again to wrest myself away. So this is another part of the when you fight an enemy. So I will roll again to see what happens. And oh boy. So I rolled the lowest one.
Oh, okay.
It says they might kill me here.
Mm-hmm.
I give myself I call upon whatever strength I have, and I pull myself with every last fiber of my being. This is the last gasp of that fight or flight instinct to get free. Do I have a chance to get away?
No.
Okay. I look at the the figures, the cultists approaching, and I yell something defiant at them, like, uh, uh, "You are evil servants of an ungod. I defy you." What did they do?
They start muttering in unison in a language that you don't understand, and you hear Cuchulainn like screech behind them and go, "After all we've been through, why would you call me such a horrible name?" And I was going to spare you for all that we've been through. That's my spider noise.
I turn to Kukulin and I say, "You were never a friend to me, it seems. So my death will be on your head for all eternity." Does he react?
He says, "No, your head will be your death for all eternity." Working out my material. And he attempts to go like bite off your head.
Okay. So basically in the rules of the fight here, I get one last roll. Nope. Okay. So that was a 4, so it's the lowest one. If I can't get away now, it will kill me. Why not? I headbutt it. Does that give me a chance to get away?
I can't think of any.
What does he do when I headbutt him? April Lynn, answer.
He doesn't have to do anything. He is only semi-solid, and as you headbutt him, your head feels very clammy, and your vision starts to dim. And you feel yourself blacking out.
Okay. I think with my final moments, I say a prayer to the god I follow, and then darkness takes me.
As you feel your soul leave your body and go
Hold on.
inside the brain of the ungod as a ghost to be summoned at his will.
That was actually going to be my question here. What does it do with my body?
Yeah, your body drops like a husk and your soul spirit goes to be burned into the brain of the ungod to be summoned at his will.
All right.
And the cultists pick through your stuff.
They loot the corpse.
They loot the corpse.
The corpse. Is any good D&D?
That's good.
Is any good D&D economy works? You kill things to take the treasure. All right.
That's Sundered Lands.
That is the Sundered Lands, or excuse me, the Sundered Land, a doomed pilgrim in the ruins of the future. We are going to take a quick break, and then we will come back with our impressions. And we're back. We just finished playing the Sundered Land. So I guess general impressions of that whole thing that we just went through as my character was, went through all these trials and travails of the Broken Reaches. What did you guys think?
Well, so first of all, I lived in a town called Sunderland. So every time you say Sundered Land, it reminds me of Sunderland. But so I liked it and I didn't like it. I liked that it provided a lot of opportunities for cooperative world building. And I really liked the aspect where you could ask somebody specific, because it felt like you saying, I don't trust what April Lynn is going to answer, so let me try Samara.
Oh, no. So whenever I ask someone to answer, it's because I felt either like that person had already been answering a lot, so I just wanted to switch. It wasn't a question of trust and answers.
Well, I liked imagining that you figured, that person's really got it out for me. Let's try the other person.
Yeah, it was really exciting to have moments where it was like, if somebody, like, I felt like being on this side of the proverbial table, that like some of my nerves were like, oh, I don't want to step on this idea that April Lynn put out there. Like, I want to give it life. But, and like, oftentimes I feel like you would get the sense that like, oh, Samara's got a real clear idea of what she thinks is going to happen here. So now I'm going to switch driving over to April Lynn and see where it goes. And it became this sort of delightful, exquisite corpse experience to sort of be like, "Oh, awesome. You took this in a way" like, I started to really like it because
Mhm.
I felt like I didn't have to have a fully fleshed out idea. All I had to do was listen and,
Mhm.
like, build on, like, what was there.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I definitely there were moments where, like, Samar, your background as a GM, like, a lot of your responses were very GM-y. Like, I don't mean this as a negative thing. I'm just saying, like, you're painting the picture in a lot of ways, and like, you had a clear idea, and I could see it forming and all that kind of stuff. So then I would go to April in to have a curveball thrown at you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like, okay, like this idea should not be just yours. Like, I want to see what happens when we interject a little bit of chaos into this.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I really like about this style of game in particular is that idea that you can't have a fully fleshed idea because somebody else is going to take it and run with it in a completely different direction. And so it's very, I don't know, chaotic and spur of the moment isn't quite what I want, but it's that idea of you never know
Mhm.
where it's going to go next. Like we talked about earlier, this process of discovery where the
Mhm.
world is unfolding around all of us. So that's what I really liked about it. What I didn't like is not knowing how the game would end. Like I felt like it was way too easy for me as a player to just put you in a situation and say, "Hey, you die now." But at the same time, I didn't want to let you get out of it. So there wasn't a clear way to determine that from my perspective. I didn't know that how the roles would work because I didn't remember that part.
Yeah, I felt like
Mhm.
there were a couple turning points for me as somebody who was, like, playing the baton world building game, on, like, this side of one, when I realized I was like, "Wait, our mission is to be full of doom, and there's no
Mhm.
rules on how hard that has to be, just the rule." And then immediately my next thought was, "Except the rules of, like, the world that we're currently establishing and wanting to respect." Um, and I felt like it so it was really fun for me to see what, April, and when you would be called on or you would jump in, and sometimes I would be like, "You know what? I just wanna lean back because I feel like you came up with such great responses to the world," but and I was feeling that, like, I could feel in myself getting too hungry to be like, "Yeah, ruin this guy." Like, put monsters in here, like, why not? And I was like, "Oh, well, because, like, that sort of ruins the unspoken rule here of, we're trying to tell a good story or,
Mhm.
like, develop the rules of this, like, world together."
Yeah, well, I absolutely wanted to have that first moment with the giant spider kind of be your doom, that just have it envelop you in this ghostly darkness, and then I realized that would make for a very short game, and even though we were going for a short game, that was a little bit
Mm.
too short.
Yeah, I think the balance that you guys had to strike with, like, your goal is to kill me, like, or cause me some level of doom. So it's very like, it's very easy to say, like, in the first encounter with danger, like, this is the doom. I think it was made more interesting by because I escaped the spider, like, we were able to introduce more elements such as the ruins,
Mhm,
such as the cultists, the gems, and then even that last kind of talk with the spider.
Mhm,
um like, it wasn't quite world building because, like, there it wasn't like, it won't be fully developed because we're coming up with this on the fly, but I like what it hinted at. I like there's an unanswered question in my mind as to whether I was led here by the
mhm,
spider. Like, was my pilgrimage, like, just something I had thought I could use as a weapon became my doom, and
mm,
I was never, it was never a weapon. I liked kind of I came into this with the idea of, like, all right, I'm going to face something. I'm going to face enemies. I'm going to fight them. And no, my weapons are gone, and my weapons are what caused me to get into this trouble in the first place. I really liked that inversion as we went on.
yeah.
Um,
And I could see how this would be so successful in its intended format of, like, a forum
yes.
and, like, a digital format of, like,
mhm,
collecting those ideas or seeing the first person who jumped in, like, it's a very by the time it was done, I was like, "Well, this was fun enough in person," but when you're doing it in person like this, it feels like sometimes these games fall short for me where I'm just like, "Why didn't I just, like, get drunk and say, like, 'yes, and' with my friends around a table for a while because there's, like, the only rule here was that, like, you ask questions and we give you these answers, and then those, like, dice rolls at the end.
Mhm.
Whereas if it was in its original format of, like, an online forum or something, I could see how the structure plays a little bit differently in a way that might be a little bit more, like, I don't know, satisfying is maybe the word?
I think also in the online format, for here it was like two people that I was going to. In an online forum, you literally will have a great many people
Mhm.
competing to be the first to answer.
Right.
So like people are going to go with their first instinct, and that I think that would lend a better flow to it in terms of that. I know that like a couple of times when I asked a question, the answers that came back were interesting and world building in a way, but they were very long. Like one of the rules that we kind of elided a little bit was keep your answers short.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
but I don't think it necessarily hurt the game. I think if anything, it actually added a little bit more richness to it because there was time to elaborate on that a little bit. But I think in the online format, um,
Oh, yeah.
maybe the strength is that it doesn't illuminate so much.
Well, and that there's, like, 10, 20, however many people giving ideas, and so then
Yeah.
it, like, goes in invariably more, like, vector directions.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, you we will learn. Um, I brevity is difficult.
Oh no, totally.
So,
Um,
sorry in advance to everyone, but mostly you 2.
I mean, I'm not saying that like you played it wrong, like you're
No,
doing it
no, no,
wrong.
I just wanna put some ground rules out there as this is the first episode that, you know, I won't be offended if at any time there's a mid-monologue edit, 'cause I just sometimes rein it in, Naomi, rein it in.
We'll just add a redacted in the center of your monologue.
Yes, just a dot, 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 meanwhile. Well, we had kind of we have, like, a few things that we want to, as we're looking at games, always return to, I think, like, roughly, so how do you guys feel about diving into some of those specifically and giving some, like, hot take reviews?
Sure. I think, yeah, we have a couple of things that we identified, so let's just kind of go through them. So the first one we had is rule book, and I mean, I think it's fun. It's kind of I don't know how much you can really say about the rule book. Really, I mean, it is one page.
Well, I mean, I said earlier that I even read that one page. Now, again, with the understanding that, like, I was not rules responsible this time, but, I mean, I guess it makes sense, but it was hard to envision what the game would actually be like from the rules, but the rules
Yes.
were clear enough to understand.
What the game was going to be mechanically, tonally, or like
Just
narratively, like in what way?
Um, I think just, like, what gameplay actually, like, looked like and
Mm,
felt like, because I don't think it wasn't until we did a couple rounds where I was like, "Oh, this is just Mike goes to a place and asks us a question, and we respond until I guess we see where the story goes," which is, again, like, a muscle that, like
mm.
anyways, I think that, like, it was a little unclear. I thought that there was gonna be more structure to it from the rules itself, which again, maybe an online forum and the way that you,
Mhm.
like, upvote things or whatever, like, feels that way.
Makes sense.
I think that for what it was, I think if you weren't familiar with us this sort of style of game and you went into it thinking that it was a role-playing game, the rules would be confusing and not enough. But
Mm,
for what it is, for the style of more narrative building, open-ended game, I like that. Now, obviously, I wasn't the one who needed the rules as much because you were the one who was leaning on them for ideas of questions to ask. Having glanced at it, I think it was useful to see that here are some suggestions of things you might want to ask. I'm
yeah.
interested to hear from your perspective, Mike, whether that section was helpful to you or not.
Oh, it absolutely was. I think I tried to have my own questions whenever I could, but there were definitely times where it's like, okay, I'm not quite sure what to do here. Look at what I have here. Look at what I have
Mhm.
here. So I'll say something like, some of the things I said was like, do I feel watched? What is my best escape route, if any? Like, because I think those were probably good prompts for me to kind of open things up. One thing I had trouble with actually is that I feel like when I was asking questions, I was asking way too many yes or no questions.
Mm.
And when you guys responded, you said yes or no, and that was, appropriate. But it's like, okay, let me try to ask something more open ended. Let me try to ask something that actually will expand the world a bit in terms of what we're doing. And I think that those prompts helped a lot in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think for what it was good. I think this isn't ever going to be a game that is a campaign setting game or more than, a half hour. It would be great for a campfire game, I think.
Mm.
Mm,
Or I went to Disneyland a while back, and my friend had actually, one of the friends I was with had prepared some games that we could play in line. Um,
mm,
and something like this would have been a good game for that. Something that just, for the 20 minutes to 40 minutes that you're standing in a long line, you throw a story back and forth. And then as soon as you get in the game, in the line, it doesn't matter whether the game ended or not.
Yeah, yeah. That's really exciting and really cool of your friend for doing. I
It was
had
very
would
fun.
never thought of something like that, but yeah, totally
it's
adding that
awesome.
to like when I know that I'm going to be waiting in line for a long time. I think one of the things I was thinking like to adapt these rules if you wanted to play like we just did and not in an online forum. One of the things that I thought would be interesting would be particularly if you had more people, and sometimes it's hard to like jump in on that sort of like dynamic the more bodies that you get, whether or not it's a deck of cards or a dice, but like you ask a question and then like okay, you pulled up the diamonds, so April Lynn, you have to answer it. Oh, you pulled
Mm,
up, whatever. And then that way it is also randomizing who is answering those things in a way. And would be a way to sort of traffic control who's jumping in when. Whereas, like, in the digital platform, it's just first come, first serve, and it's got wider audience.
mm,
Yeah, I think the other thing, so we're kind of straying away from rulebook at this point, but one of the ideas, and this kind of falls into mechanics, which is the next thing, um, a clear endpoint, whether it be a
yeah.
built-in game timer, like you have a certain number of questions you can ask, or once you ask, I don't know what that would look like. I think a certain number of game turns is the clearest way to do it, but something to give us
Yeah.
all an idea, or only, even more interesting for us to have the game timer and for you to not have it so you don't know
Hmm.
how long you have to escape, or vice versa that
Until
we don't
certain
know how
doom,
long.
right?
If we don't get you to certain doom by a certain point, then you escape scot free.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like the one thing that I was feeling was like I didn't know how to progress things. Like, I didn't know how to accelerate towards the end. Absolutely. Something like that would definitely like give it a bit more structure. I'm not necessarily sure that you'd need it maybe for further plays. I think for the first time, like maybe an optional thing to like give a little bit more structure to it, I think would be very beneficial. But I think like if we were to play this again, I think that we have a clearer picture of how to progress things. So maybe that would, I don't know, maybe it would help progress things a little bit.
Well, I think
Uh,
it's also hitting on the tension of us adapting a game. The original designer's intention for the use of this game and the platform to use this game in terms of the digital setting, like there was a part of me that was like remembering at the end of this as we've been talking through, like I'd be so excited if like any one of the Slack or Discord groups I'm a part of like started one of these stories and
mm,
like it goes on indefinitely. Like why does there need to be an end as long as there's somebody to answer and be like, well, these are the quests of Michael O'Shanahan O'Grady O'Kelly, like see where he goes.
Really doesn't
And
want that to get cut.
I know, I'm so
there's no way I can cut that now. You've said it everywhere.
but yeah, I mean, like, so like in terms of the mechanics serving the original thing, like I think that like it's a really exciting thing if it was done in that platform. But I do think that if you're gonna, I think it has application in
Mm,
like real time, like small group situation like we just did. But in that way, that I would want to add like a timer or something. I really like the idea that one side knows how much time you have.
yeah, I really like the idea of like an asymmetrical timer. One group knows how long it's going to take. Um, the other does not. One thing I will say also, just with regard to kind of the ending of it, I really felt that like the dice roll mechanic was it felt weirdly tacked on, or yeah, maybe not tacked on, but like it felt out of sync with the rest of the narrative.
Hmm.
Like like everything was kind of in our control. When I rolled, it literally says here, roll 2 dice, and like on a 2 to 5, say this. If the fight goes to the third round, say this. It's a way to kind of mitigate the tension between you're trying to kill me, I'm trying to stay alive. But at the same time, I don't know if it really worked that well, because I felt I had to go through this stuff, and like you guys just said, like, no, it doesn't work. And I think you were right. I think it doesn't make sense for it to work
Mm.
in the situation that it was. But it's weird that it kept, like, the rules kept saying I had to force this question a little bit.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why, like, I would wanna see, like, randomization used on like, if we were rolling dice to see who had to respond to your questions, it would maybe feel less awkward to roll a dice to see if you succeeded fighting something. But, like, it felt like to me, the total, like, "Oh, we've run this a few times," and, like, certain, like, trolls on the board were like, "Yep, and you die, certain doom." And so it had to build in a certain referee mechanic or a randomization
mhm.
mechanic so that, like, it wasn't always so lopsided because, people and their tendencies.
Yeah, I mean, there's something in here that says, like, we can delete it if it's disruptive as well. But it's like, I'm walking through the desert and someone says, you have a heart attack and die. Goodbye. Like, no, no, we're not doing
Mhm.
Well, and also the dice rolls felt like they weren't particularly, like I felt like most of them when you rolled, I was ready for some, like, a 1 is my your head pops off certain doom, but it was like, "Oh, I rolled the lowest I could. I might not escape this."
Yeah,
And I was
totally.
like, "Oh, okay. Well, so I guess it is still up to us,
It's very
but we
vague.
want you to." Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I guess, like, being grounded in, like, I feel like game stakes, right? Like, why do I care? And if you've set up at the beginning that you want to escape and we want certain doom, I felt like there was nothing in the mechanics that, like, kept me from wanting to play God and just have you be destroyed because I could, beyond just, like, I guess we wanted to tell a good story.
Mhm.
Speaking of good story, another thing we wanted to talk about a little bit was the narrative that this game kind of creates, through its mechanics and whatnot.
So before we talk about that, I had one more thing to say about the mechanics, though.
Oh, sure, sure, sure.
Specifically, we had said, "Do they serve the theme?" And I find myself remembering the name of this, the subtitle of this game is something about a pilgrim wandering the ruins of a future time. Is that what it is?
A doomed pilgrim in the ruins of the future.
Okay, so we get the doomed pilgrim part. We get some
Yep.
ruins in there. But I felt like after you read that one sentence, there was nothing in the narrative or the mechanics that really led me to remember like that this was the future.
Mm.
That setting that we set up at the beginning wasn't emphasized in the mechanics in any of the suggested questions, unless there were questions that you just ignored. But um, I felt like there probably needed to be more of a reminder of that as we played, to keep the setting at the forefront.
Yeah, looking through this, actually, like, it does say a doomed pilgrim in the ruins of the future, but a lot of like the enemies and the items I had, they don't really reflect the future part.
Yeah.
Like, some of the other enemies are like predatory bandit ghouls. That doesn't sound like futury. Um,
Yeah, and in my head, I kind of had this, like, gunslinger, like, the Dark Tower sort of setting, so
yeah.
futuristic, but also Wild West, and actually, I was envisioning your character as kind of a gunslinger-esque character, you cloaked in black, kinda silent.
Mhm.
But again, after that initial starting, really everything was just kind of generic fantasy. You're in some sort of wasteland, there's a big spider god and some ruins. Um,
But you made it really interesting. I was like, "What? We got a dying star here or all overwhelming darkness, or are we in
oh,
the
see, I
upside
wasn't
down
even
already?"
I wasn't even thinking dying star, uh, but that could have been interesting. So, anyway, so that was one of the additional comments I had on the mechanics.
Yeah, I mean, and it kind of that does kind of feed into narrative though too, because like there are a lot of terms that um like we didn't really use or define. Like, we had that discussion about what is an ungod. We never really answered that, but I don't think necessarily we needed to. Like, a lot of the things in here seem to be like kind of background world building that aren't
exactly.
necessarily needed to be fleshed out.
Yeah.
I think it is just like texture.
Right. They're like opportunities to like I feel like a lot of these games throw in some of this stuff and it's interesting to see what the players like what sticks on the player's mind to run with. Because I felt like when you turned the corner in the ruins and you saw the cultists, I was like, weren't we a cult of the ungod? Like, is it part of our responsibility to
Oh,
add that in there too?
that's right. We were a murder cult. I wasn't even thinking about the fact that, I mean, I kind of was just by virtue of, well, there's this ungod. It seems it makes sense that he would have devotees. But
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, like, I think the cultists were not necessarily they didn't play a huge role in the narrative. I mean, I think they probably could have if we did, but I think the idea of a giant ghost spider with a smile chasing me down was probably the more attractive thing to like kind of hitch your wagon to.
I really love that. I love that the ghost ended up being the spider.
Yeah.
That was so good.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like the while there were maybe like it was maybe just a benefit of like the space that we found the three of ourselves sort of falling into was that by the end of it, I was like, oh, this is a cool like little weird side story like thing that we fell upon. The man with the ghost in his head, like it like Mike, like you said earlier, like it ultimately became your undoing. You thought it was going to be your weapon, like and then you
Mm.
got sucked into his brain like okay great like it was a nice tidy little thing that was an engaging story but again didn't necessarily extend beyond kind of your standard fantasy world that like maybe with some of the prompts they gave us or something else we could have taken it and to a different more interesting unique place.
It was actually
So
a
so
hologram.
Yes.
one thing you mentioned that actually like this kind of sparked an idea in my head of like what this reminds me of, and I've been trying to figure it out. So this whole thing kind of felt like so I'm reading right now. I'm reading the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, and there's chapters in in those novels that are just completely different characters in a different part of the world doing something completely different that's kind of tangentially related to everything else that's going on. This felt like an interlude. Like this felt like, or almost like a prologue, like an inciting event for something that happens later. It is a self-contained thing with world building around the edges to
Mhm.
give you a sense of place, but not necessarily a story in and of itself. With a like rising character arc and blah 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 blah. It is a snapshot of the world that you're
Right.
in. This definitely felt like playing the intro to a fantasy novel that will like maybe it's appropriate we're doing this for our
Yeah.
first episode, like because it is kind of like just before the action happens. Like
Kuklain is going to be a fixture in our stories going forward.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't object to that. Depending on what we do next. I don't know if we can have a giant ghost spider in World War II Europe, but we'll see what happens.
Well, but you could also get Kuchlain's like life story. Like, he was a ghost.
Before he became the spider.
Yeah, before he became the spider. What was his life like? I mean, I don't know. We're gonna find out. That's what this podcast is about, just the
Episode 2 of
adventures.
Shot Test Kitchen. The collected adventures of Kuklain.
God, this really is like the encapsulation of play to see what happens. Play to see what happens with the giant ghost spider.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, so the last thing we wanted to talk about a little bit was agency. And so one thing I did kind of feel was that like I didn't necessarily have a lot of control over my character.
Mhm.
But I think that was almost by design. Like I couldn't say like I stabbed the spider.
Mhm.
I couldn't say that like, I don't have an active role.
Mhm.
Like it is, I am trying to exist while you guys have the more active role, which is kind of a weird inversion of the player GM role.
Mhm.
Mm.
I don't know how you guys experience that.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting idea. Honestly, I enjoy that kind of that role of passively just responding to what other players are creating.
Mm.
So I don't even know that I would Because so I'm thinking of this in terms of a forum game. The person leading the game, their purpose is to give the players agency, to give the players a world to build and explore. So in this sense, that works really great for something that's done online, because if I go in on a Facebook group that I am a moderator on and I say, "Hey guys, we're going to play a game," and they get to have all the control. What a great
Mm.
way to build community.
Mhm.
Mm.
Um,
Totally.
rather than just throwing something at them and letting them respond to it. I mean, there is a certain element of that because you were the one asking questions and deciding what happens next to a certain extent. But
And
yeah,
there's also a way sorry.
I was done. I was rambling at that point.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think that there's something really exciting too, like in that position that you can lob up more like uh, scary is the only word that I can think of as somebody like who was really nervous about building the world. But like Mike, you could have gone even farther with stuff of like, great, so I'm gonna run over this cliff, like run to the edge of this cliff face that feels like it's really high, but what do I see? And, like, you did that a few times of, like, "Okay, go here, like, what is there?" And, I punch it, am I able like, what happens? Or, and I think that
Mm.
you basically much like the entire game itself seems to be, like, this prologue moment of a fantasy, series or sci-fi series, like, the way
Mm.
that you tee up the questions also feels like everything but, and then, then the people on the other side have to take it, and I think that that would be really exciting, in a forum setting and very successful in terms of, like, building community and, like, also seeing because, like, I found as somebody who hasn't played a game with you, April Lynn, like, I found that it was a really great exercise to be like, "Oh, I'm finding some, like, trust with this, like, new person that, like,
Mhm,
we haven't played games with before," to be like, "Okay, well, where is she going, and how do we sort of keep the world in the same universe together?" Which was a really exciting, like, just like, "Oh, okay." Like, now at the end of this, I feel like I could jump into even more, like, risky games with you and that we would,
mhm.
build that thing safely together.
Yeah, and so you were the one who was kind of the most worried about this experience and as, quote unquote, doing it wrong. Um, so I'd love to hear more about how you feel having done it now, whether some of that apprehension is gone.
Yes and no. Like, I feel like I felt myself fall like Mike's sort of observation, like old tricks of like, oh yeah, okay, right, I know how to do this.
Hmm.
Mm.
And even like my tendencies towards like tone, like where I went tonally, like felt like, oh, okay. Like even as I was creating the voice for Ghost on God, I was like, "Oh, well, I made an emotional support ghost that's kind of undercutting how terrifying this world is, but also maybe making it more terrifying." I don't know. Okay, well, you went there, you made that choice. Okay.
I loved that he became an emotional support ghost. I thought that that was hilarious, and I love how it all kind of wrapped up together in the end in that moment of humor where he's like, "Why does it always have to be about you?"
Mm. That was a weird thing, actually. Like, so I kind of came into this with an idea like this. I think there was a question of not only agency in terms of like actions and whatnot, but an agency in terms of tone. Like,
Mm.
I was definitely in the initial part of it, like, this is serious, this is high concept, blah 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 blah, and like then you're like, nope, he spits a loogie at you, and
Oh, that
like,
was
or
only
is an
because I
emotional.
don't know how else to describe I realized as I was saying it, I was like, "Oh, I don't know how to describe somebody, like, shooting a web that's not Spider-Man, or, like, very slowly out of a spider's ass." So then I was like, he spits a spider loogie. Oh, I need to."
No, no, I know. I mean, the word loogie in and of itself is a little bit whimsical. Um, that's a sentence. But basically, like, but even beyond just like that part, like, the idea that like he's an emotional support ghost, and like, like I was kind of like, it's grim in the ruins of the future, and you're like, Michael O'Grady O'Shanahan, like, it basically like I ended up going with it because it's just like well, not so much going with it, but like I think I changed my idea of where this was going partway through, and I was kind of the straight man to the craziness, but
I want to talk about this
Um,
for a second, though. This is a little bit of a tangent, but it's role-playing games in general, and I think it's important to talk about, especially as we're going to be, like, building a lot of worlds and doing them. So,
Mhm.
um, like, for me, like, I can sit there and reflect and go like, "Oh, Samara, that was a little bit of, like, an RP bully move, that it was a bold
mm,
choice. It overtook anything. It wasn't paying attention to anything that was happening before, even but everything wasn't quite established yet, so it wasn't necessarily, like, stealing the storyline, but it certainly was saying, like, "We're taking a left here." And I think
mm,
that when players do that, there's there's an opportunity for other players and for, like, the game masters that are running these tables to, like, take it and still, like, obviously some people are always gonna be super stubborn, but I still think that there is a way that you can turn it, right? So if I did your name,
mm,
in that way that is like, okay, that's a funny thing of me making fun of your name, like, you could still take and go, "No, this is really scary," and be like, "How do they know my true name?" And then it brings it back to
mm,
this moment of, like, whatever. And if it's an emotional support ghost, then it's like and we still wanna build this, like, horrifying, scary world, then it's like, yeah, no, I know you've been with me when that baby and the this horrible thing, and, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can always I think that too often, like, bullies get away with murder, and, like, we don't have to let them. Like, if we have, like, a collective, like, tonal idea that we think is more interesting and it's on the bullies of the world, and I say this as a bully, to, like, listen better, but, that, like, we should also remember in these games that's like, no, like, if we think that's more interesting, like, let's go in there and help it.
Yeah, and so for my part, this is actually an interesting thing. I took those moments, I didn't take them entirely seriously. Like, they were moments of levity, and they were kind of metagaming moments of levity. Like, the comment about emotional support ghost was half serious. I think that going with the idea that he was less of a weapon and more of a companion, uh, was a really interesting direction to go in. And the Samara whispering your fake slash real name, was funny, and I kind of, in my mind, interpreted that to just that's not actually the character's name, it's just Samara being goofy, and I think that there's room for that without I think you can be goofy in a metagaming way in a story like this, without it
Mm,
making the story itself goofy.
right.
And for
oh,
my part,
absolutely.
I never felt like the story had suddenly gone off the rails into ridiculous land. The tone I was seeing in my mind was still that doomed world kind of situation. So I think that's an interesting thing to learn about each other as players as we continue on.
Hmm. And I do want to say, like, Samara described it as bullying. Like, I didn't feel bullied. Like, I mean, we were still early on enough that it was like, this is a thing where, like the ground rules haven't been established in a way, and like it's a certain level of like the way that this game is set up. Like, this is not my story. It's not like you're ruining my perfect idea for like that's not the point of this game.
Right.
I think probably something I could have done better though. Like much like Aprilyn said, like I took the saying of the name as like oh, it's Samara. She calls me that. We'll push that aside. But to your point, I think it might have been more interesting if I had yes anded that,
Mm,
Mm,
because I kind of went no, but okay, and so I think instead of uh, like I should have used it. It was there, and I think that might have led to some more interesting things. It might not have, but I think it's definitely. I think that the thing I want to convey is that like it was a. I think this game is designed for collaboration, and I should have been a little bit more collaborative, even with some of the weirder stuff, because I think it would have been interesting as well.
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that there's just I think that there's just a broader point that those opportunities are always there to either embrace them as metagaming moments, because also I think it's important when you're role playing to be like, yeah, but like we're still people around here, and like, especially for longer games, like it's important to have those moments that sort of take you out for a brief second and can go back in. And also there are great opportunities in those metagame moments that break tension and take you out of it for a second to build on it and incorporate it in.
Mhm.
And they both just go to like being in tune with each other in the sort of unspoken or spoken contract that that group has playing, and just really being an active listener in a way, which is the most exciting part to me about role-playing games, that it like forces us to be present and play.
One of the moments that I remember from a different game I was playing, I think it was Microscope, which is another one on our list. The concept of giant space whales came into the game. And I think most of us were trying to go for a very serious game, but we also just had this an understanding that you could add whatever you wanted within certain parameters, and one of the players added giant space whales, and we said, okay, we're gonna go with giant space whales, and we managed to make a very like cohesive, serious story that had this just completely ridiculous element that we just went with. And I think that's a tension that it kind of goes up and down, and it's it can be.
Hey man, there was a really emo episode of Doctor Who about a space whale.
That's
I was thinking of that one too. One of the
yeah. And I'm glad you got there. Like, that's always awesome when that works out that way.
Yeah. Anything like kind of like closing thoughts on this thing before we wrap up? Like, would you play this again or whatnot? Like, I really want to see this done in like an online format and see what kind of response I get. I already have some ideas on where I can like check this out. What about you guys?
Pretty sure I know several places where I'm just going to try this out. I'll invite you to if you want to participate.
Yeah,
I could totally do that. I want to kill someone now, so
I'll lead the next game, and you can be one of the people that's leading me to my doom.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would definitely play again. I'd throw this in any like Slack or Discord group that I'm in and see it in that format. And also, I'd play it again in person and try out what the timer, like I'm interested to see what a timer would do to the real person gameplay.
Yeah, I think it was April Lynn who referred to it almost as a campfire game. I think that's almost an ideal situation to play something like this in real life.
Yes.
Including the timer as well, but yeah.
Totally.
All right, cool. So I think that's going to be it for this first episode of One Shot Test Kitchen. Thanks to everybody for joining us. And if you're interested in playing the Sundered Land for yourself, it's available at nightskygames.com. I guess, April Lynn, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at AL Cowette, so that is ALCAOUETTE, on Instagram and also on Twitter, though I don't really use Twitter very much, so Instagram is the place you'll find me.
Sounds good. And Samara, how about you?
I'm at Naomi at Instagram. Not going to spell it for you. Just figure it out. I'm at Naomi, Naeymi on Instagram, and at Samara Naomi on Twitter, where I'm mostly a lurker.
That might be the first time I've actually heard you say your last name. I thought it was pronounced differently.
Wait, how did you think it was pronounced?
Naomi.
That's close enough. There's just a little diphthong in there.
Yeah, I'm a syllable off, but you know.
I accept Naomi. I don't accept Naomi.
Yeah.
Nimi. There's a lot of the best one ever was Samurai Naomi. There's just I don't know how you get that from the letters, but to each his own.
Nobody even tried my last name, so I'm not even sure if Mike remembers how to pronounce it.
It's Cowette, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Good job.
Regardless, I'm going to buck the trend and say you can find me at Galenblade on Twitter. It sounded cooler when I was 14. That's GALENBLADE. Thanks to everybody for listening. If you have any comments or questions for us, or if you have a suggestion for a game that we can take on in the future, please drop us a line. We're at ostkpodcast@gmail.com. And if you'd like to help out, please leave us a review on your podcast service of choice. It really does help people discover the show. Thanks to everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
What are you expecting out of this, April?
Lynn.
What do you... God damn it.
Start calling me Owl.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
So,
let me do this. Oh, no, no, let me redo this.